And if I were to give a proper introduction to Dr. Riedinger, he would have 2 minutes to speak and I would be speaking for the other 37. Dr. Riedinger has been at the University of Tennessee for 49 years. He just retired last year, and here are just a few of the things that he has done and been recognized for. He's a professor of physics. He got his doctoral degree from Vanderbilt University. He has over 200 refereed presentations. He's spoken all over the world. He's conducted his nuclear physics research all over the world. He won the University of Tennessee's Chancellor's Award in Research. He was, in 2008-2009, the University of Tennessee Mace Bearer, the highest award for a faculty member. He has been director of the Science Alliance. He's been head of the physics department twice. He's been UT's associate vice chancellor for research. At Oak Ridge National Laboratory, he has been deputy director for science and technology, associate lab director for university participation, and he has been the first director of the Bredesen Center, the great interdisciplinary doctoral producing center between the University of Tennessee and Oak Ridge National Laboratory. As you can see, he absolutely exemplifies the partnership between UT and Oak Ridge. And so that's why it's a thrill to know that he has a book coming out on that subject and that he'll be speaking to us today, Dr. Lee Riedinger.
Thank you, Mark. What a great joy to be here giving this talk. I hate that it has to be over Zoom, but that's the nature of the times. I'm happy to see so many people I know and have respect in the audience, although I can't see you personally. There's Soren Sorensen, my successor as department head, and Lee Dodds is on the call. Gee whiz, Lee is of my era, of course, and we're both retired. David Brill is my editor. He's in the audience. Jolyn Cunningham, I've known for a long time, been on committees, and John Becker sits in California, and he's a longtime nuclear physics friend. So yeah, I've been around a long time, and I really admire this forum. Gee whiz, I've watched Mark Littman run this, publish popular books, and as we decided to write our book about the history of this connection, Mark's books are models of what I think we should try to do. And David Brill is helping me do that. So let me show some illustrations here, see if I can do this properly. Okay, I assume you can all see that. So yeah, I want to talk about the partnership that's been going for 80 years and is a model of what a university and a national laboratory can hope to achieve, I feel. And the team, Mark mentioned I have a great team, and this is our team. I have 3 co-authors. Yeah, Bill Bugg hired me in '71 onto the physics faculty. Bill is in his late 80s and still is very sharp and has a long history since he was a graduate student in the physics department in the early to mid 50s. Ray Smith is the Oak Ridge historian, retired from Y12, very valuable part of the team. Al Ekibus, retired from running O&L libraries, big part of the team. And then David Brill is our editor. Wow, what a difference he's made. There he is in a picture without a beard. Now he has stopped shaving, it seems. So he just looks a little different. Mary Zuhr is a retired school librarian. Then David Keim from the laboratory and Monica Ely from the library faculty are people that help us a lot. This is a book we need to get to UT Press by next July 1st. And I think we'll get it done. We're doing well because of the pandemic, because I can't travel and we all have a lot of time to work on this. The story starts in 1940. Oak Ridge did not exist. It was a farming community. UT was not a very strong university in 1940. there had been tough financial times in the state in the 30s. President Hoskins was not a particularly good president of the university, but we had good football teams, of course. General Neyland was the guru, and UT was national champs in football in 1940. And look at the football stadium there in 1940. The physics building wasn't there yet. So we were a strong football university, but not a very good university otherwise. There was poor financial support from the state. Higher ed was not viewed as a priority in the state, I'm afraid, throughout the 30s. There was even hostility. You know, the common citizen thought, why do we need college education? There were economic problems in the state. UT had no PhD programs in 1940. There was very little faculty research. And in a sense, the university needed Oak Ridge to come along, needed the partnership, I feel, with the Oak Ridge facilities in order to advance rapidly. The physics department in 1940 was led by Kenneth Hertel. Well, he was one of the people that was doing research in the 30s. There was a budget crunch where the state budget for UT dropped by a factor of 2 in the mid 30s, and he took that to heart and tried to figure out how can we help the citizens in order that they might support more funding for the university. So he started doing research on cotton fibers. Cotton was important to the state at that time. And he did well. He got his first patent in 39. Kenneth Hertel helped form the UT Research Corporation. And so he was a person, Hertel, upper right, who really was doing research and saw the vision that the university had to improve somehow, especially in research and graduate education. During World War II, the university was dominated by training programs. More than 8,000 people came to UT during World War II in order to be trained in principles of math and science and engineering. Alvin Nielsen joined the faculty in 1935, then became department head and dean after Hertel. Kay Way was on the faculty before 1940. She came, but then she went off to Chicago during the Manhattan Project. Alvin Nielsen went to Ohio State during the Manhattan Project. A rare, very important person was William Pollard, picture on lower right. He joined the faculty in physics faculty in 36. He was invited to go to MIT to join the radiation lab when the Manhattan Project started. President Hoskins wouldn't let him go. He felt he was losing too many faculty, so he wouldn't let William Pollard go. Finally, then a year later, Pollard was invited to go to Columbia as part of the Manhattan Project, and Hoskins finally did give Pollard a lead. But Pollard, Hertel, Nielsen, Kay Way are very crucial people for the story. So as I look at the timeline for 1940, I say Kenneth Hertel was a person I'd like to highlight and who helped not only the department, but the whole university. Of course, nuclear fission was on the scene. The seminal experiment occurred in Berlin in December of 1938, where Hahn and Strassman did the seminal experiments where you hit uranium with a neutron and something happens, and they didn't know what was happening, how they were making radium or whatever. They finally figured out in December of 38 that a simple slow neutron hitting a uranium nucleus made it split into two. And that was the start of this race, the start of the race between Germany and the US, especially to see if you can control this nuclear fission process to build an atomic bomb. And so it's uranium-235, when it absorbs a neutron that splits into two pieces and emits neutrons. And that's the energy is what makes the bomb go boom. The neutrons are what make a chain reaction and cause other uranium to fission in the neighborhood. And the energy is high. 1 kilogram of uranium has the same energy as 2,000 tons of coal being burned. And so all this was happening around in the late 30s, around 1940. Progress was being made in understanding nuclear fission in Europe, in England, a little bit in the US, but we were not taking it seriously. Our government was not taking it seriously. This was a war in Europe. Yeah, there was this possibility of atomic bomb, but it didn't concern us. Well, all of that changed on December 7th of 1941 when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. And I love this photograph. There's one of the Japanese airplanes that just dropped a torpedo that sank the West Virginia right there. And that's what happened that day. I think there were 7 or whatever destroyers that got sunk. Well, that changed everything. We then were in the war, in World War II. President Roosevelt then did commission the Manhattan Project. Enrico Fermi was a great Italian physicist that went to Stockholm to win his Nobel Prize, to accept his Nobel Prize in 1938. And that got him out of fascist Italy. His wife was Jewish, by the way, and got him to Sweden. And then he came to the US, first to Columbia, to work on seeing if you could build a pile of uranium and make a self-sustaining fission chain reaction. On the right is a of his first pile, uranium and graphite, and see if he can make a chain reaction. And that did occur in December of 1942. They did have that go critical and run for 4 minutes. There were no shielding, there was no cooling. If you let it run, that pile of uranium, that primitive reactor, if he let it run for an hour, they all would have died. But he knew that would be dangerous. He suspected it would, and so he shut it down after 4 minutes. But then he knew how to build a real reactor. Well, then Oak Ridge was chosen as the place where you might try to build that real reactor. And thus 59,000 acres of land, farmland in Anderson County and Roane County were purchased or taken by the federal government in September of 42 to be the site of 3 facilities important for the Manhattan Project. There was Y-12, still there, of course. The purpose of that was to see if you could enrich to build an atomic bomb. There was a K-25 site, which was another way to perhaps enrich uranium by gaseous diffusion. And then there was the X-10 site where Fermi's little primitive pile would be expanded and built a self-sustaining reactor with cooling and shielding. And the purpose would be to see if you could produce plutonium-239. So this all started happening very quickly in 1942. 7 UT faculty, by the way, went on leave during this period to work at the Clinton Engineer Works. Well, that happened again. I don't know why every once in a while I lose control, so I have to back out of this and then get back into it. I'm still sharing the screen. Sorry about this. So Y-12 was then the facility where Ernst Lawrence, the Nobel laureate from Berkeley, came to build calutrons, whereas it's a way to electromagnetically separate uranium isotopes. Most of the uranium in the ground is isotope 238, but you want to enrich it in isotope 235 because that is the one that splits in 2. When you hit it with a neutron, that's the one that fissions. And so this was a big project to build hundreds of calutrons and run them for months and a year to see if you could make enough enriched uranium to build an atomic bomb. And this was hard to get going. It was a difficult technology. Finally, by January of 45, they were on track, and they figured by summer they'd have maybe 45 kilograms of enriched uranium-235, which was then shipped piece by piece to Los Alamos, where the bomb was being designed and built by courier, by train. Okay, happened again. Do not understand that. The graphite reactor went critical in November of 1943, 1 year after ground was broken. an amazing pace, an amazing accomplishment. And the purpose of this reactor was to make plutonium-239 by capturing neutrons on the fuel rods, uranium-238, because plutonium-239 is an even better fission source than uranium-235, an even better way to build an atomic bomb. Well, this worked. The bomb was designed at Los Alamos. It was then sent to the Pacific. And then finally, on August 6, 1945, the Enola Gay, the aircraft, carried the bomb on the right, the little boy, which is a uranium-235 atomic bomb, and it was dropped on Hiroshima. Amazing explosion. Devastation was amazing. 100,000 people were killed instantly. Another 200,000 within 5 years due to radiation sickness. Almost all buildings were leveled. It was an amazing, a brutal weapon used to try and bring Japan to its knees. 3 days later, of course, 3 days later, the second atomic bomb, the plutonium bomb, was dropped on Nagasaki. Finally, then Japan surrendered in mid-August of 1945. Well, already by September, there were the real beginnings of a more intimate partnership between UT and Oak Ridge. In September of 45 already, a month after the war ended, Fred Smith, the dean of the graduate school, met with Warren Whittaker, director of Clinton Labs. That was what the name of the X-10 site, Clinton Laboratories, and the director of chemistry division. They met because Whittaker and Johnson realized they needed a way to keep researchers there at the end of the war. A lot of people working at Oak Ridge and other Manhattan Project sites had their graduate education interrupted to join the effort, and they wanted to keep them working there, but they needed to complete their graduate work, their PhDs. And so Oak Ridge wanted on-site graduate courses to help keep those researchers. So already in October of 45, 2 physics courses were begun in Oak Ridge. Chicago. And she suggested, she had heard that universities around Chicago and New York were clustering together to see if they could utilize the Manhattan Project facilities and have a real university laboratory partnership. She said, why not UT? Why not other universities in the South? Why not band together to utilize Clinton laboratory facilities? Because universities in the South, on average, did not have much of a research capability. Hertel and Pollard took that idea to President Hoskins a few days later. Surprisingly, he bought into it. He was a very conservative guy. November, there was a dinner meeting at the Andrew Johnson Hotel, downtown Knoxville. Dean Smith, Hertel, Pollard, 6 people from Clinton Labs to plan what to do next. And what to do next was a December 5th conference that Pollard organized at the Andrew Johnson, where they invited UT representatives plus 9 other universities from the South, Vanderbilt, Duke, North Carolina, and so on, to talk about how these universities would leverage Oak Ridge facilities. So already in December of 45, this move was afoot. Out of that came ORINS, the Oak Ridge Institute of Nuclear Studies. William Pollard took the lead on this. Hoskins let him be off of teaching for a year to organize this. Pollard led a December 1945 planning session at Oak Ridge High to put together the ideas for ORINS, for this first institute, a university consortium that would somehow interface with the Oak Ridge federal facilities in order to promote joint research and graduate education. Pollard was the chair of this new committee, this new entity, and Kenneth Hertel chaired the graduate education committee. And they then really ramped up their offerings and started offering a whole slate of courses at the 3 plants in Oak Ridge, starting in January of 46, courses in chemistry, math, physics, and engineering. And thus began the heavy role of UT in graduate education in Oak Ridge. In the late 40s, there was considerable question about continuation of the Oak Ridge facilities. Future of Clinton Labs was in doubt. The war was won, the Manhattan Project was over, the missions had been served. And so would Clinton Labs continue? There was a February 47 report expressing skepticism that they could continue as a viable research entity. Living conditions were poor management, hard to keep people there. In fact, the Nobel laureate Robbie from Columbia came to Oak Ridge to try and steal people and programs away, to have them move to the Mecca of the Northeast, the New York area. But General Groves stopped that raiding party. Orange was incorporated in October 46 with Pollard as the leader. 14 member universities, UT and Vanderbilt, two of the prime ones. And that was important because as the question of the continuation of the Oak Ridge laboratories was on the table, this set of 14 member universities of Orange did an effective job of lobbying the federal government that Oak Ridge should continue. Monsanto was brought in to operate, to manage Clinton Labs. The forerunner of Union Carbide was operating the two other plants, Y12 and K25. In May of 47, AEC, the Atomic Energy Commission, was born and given control of these facilities in January of 47. AEC brought in Monsanto, but then Monsanto decided they would replace Monsanto, and then a year of uncertainty occurred. Orange University asked, why not us? Maybe we, the universities, should operate and manage Clinton laboratories. It was too early for that. An idea who just wasn't mature enough. The institution, Orange, wasn't mature enough. And so in in September 47, the AEC started negotiating with the University of Chicago to manage the Clinton labs. Christmas of 47 was a tough time in Oak Ridge. David Lilienthal, who was at TVA before, was now chair of the Atomic Energy Commission. He announced that Union Carbide was then Carbide and Carbon Chemicals would then manage Clinton National Laboratory. And more importantly, they announced that all reactor development work would move out of Oak Ridge. Gone. That would cost job programs in Oak Ridge. But by February of 48, Lilienthal reassured Clinton Labs they would have a future. The name was changed to Oak Ridge National Lab. There would be research programs continuing, and Orange would play a role in educational programs at Clinton and now Oak Ridge National Laboratory. There was the head of the Carnegie Foundation gave a speech in March of 48 saying that universities from the South should do something to take over management of Oak Ridge in order to bolster the state of research in the South. Well, that was an idea that really did not happen for another 52 years, but the idea was laid already in 1948. So in my timeline, I give credit to William Pollard, another physics professor who got Orange started and ran Orange throughout the rest of his career. Very important for the 1940s for this partnership. Already Oak Ridge had a big impact on UT, and by the early 50s at UT, there were new nuclear energy associated courses, not only in physics and chemistry, but in engineering, economics, political science. And so this was really affecting the university, the presence of Oak Ridge nearby. The first PhD programs were established in physics and chemistry in 1946. New faculty were brought in, there's more research. Research grants were coming to UT because of being next to Oak Ridge. And this quote, I love this quote, where in 1951, President Brem was quoted as saying in the Oak Ridge Laboratory News that and to paraphrase that, UT prospers, is fortunate because of its close proximity to the unique Oak Ridge National Laboratory. It helps the faculty, helps grad students, it helps research. And the last sentence, the university has been strengthened as a research center and as a training ground for young scientists. Well, that same quote, almost word for word, could be said today by the last president or the current president or the next president of UT. But it was said very eloquently in a timeless way already in 1951. And in 1951, there were 29 faculty working as consultants at Oak Ridge facilities from various departments. Chemical engineering had the most because Oak Ridge National Lab was a chemical engineering lab to a large extent. Some of these are physics faculty, Burkhoff and Nielsen and Isabel Tipton and Trimmer. There's Bill Snyder right there, W. Snyder, that's Bill Snyder, who became chancellor in the 90s, still is around, plays the organ at the Tennessee Theater. So these were the first set of UT faculty working as consultants at the 3 Oak Ridge facilities. George Schweitzer was there. George Schweitzer is still here. George Schweitzer is still on the chemistry faculty. He's now 95. He's been on the faculty 71 years. He was hired in 1948 after he got his PhD in Illinois to come here to teach graduate inorganic chemistry and radiochemistry and to supervise UT's chemistry program at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. And he's been here ever since, 71 years. He's taught probably just keeps going, but he was there when UT really got involved in Oak Ridge for the first time. In the 1950s, Oak Ridge National Lab was a reactor lab, in spite of the fact that the AEC moved the reactor programs to Argonne National Lab. Argonne really wasn't up to speed enough to handle that prime direction. And so a lot of the programs gravitated back to Oak Ridge. There were 9 new reactors that were built in Oak Ridge in the 50s. The leaders were Eugene Wigner and Alvin Weinberg. Wigner was a later Nobel laureate in physics from Europe. He brought Weinberg with him when he moved from Chicago to Oak Ridge. Wigner became director of research at Oak Ridge at Clinton National Lab first. In 47, he went back to Princeton, back to his university post, and Alvin Weinberg took over as director of research and then became director of the laboratory in 1955. And Weinberg was a reactor guy who drove these various reactor programs that had a profound effect on Oak Ridge and a profound effect on UT. Lee Dodd's nuclear engineering department was started in 1957 under the leadership of Pete Pasqua. And that was the Pasqua nuclear engineering building there. That building's gone now. It's been torn down and a new engineering building is being constructed. Well, UT benefited by being next to the prime reactor lab in the country. Throughout the 50s, UT benefited by graduate students from Oak Ridge working and getting PhDs, finishing their PhDs at UT. People that had had their graduate careers interrupted by the Manhattan Project, or like Sam Hurst and Rufus Ritchie in the photo there, they came to work in the health physics division at Oak Ridge in 1948 and 1949. They came without a PhD. They made their mark in research at Oak Ridge National Lab in the health physics division. And along the way, they finished their PhDs in the physics department, both in 1959. Sam Hurst was an entrepreneur. He started 5 companies, had 34 patents, started Elo Graphics, which was bought out by someone else that has become the main company that makes touch screens for all the electronics that we use now. Rufus Ritchie discovered surface plasmons in metals, which was very important later for the optoelectronics industry. So they were really good graduate students who were also working at the lab, and there were many others like that. So in the 50s, I really give credit to Alvin Weinberg for his contributions to the partnership. And Alvin Weinberg had a vision that he published in 1962 in the journal Science, a vision that the national laboratories need to be used somehow to help educate the next generation of scientists and engineers. You've got all this talent at the national labs, but how are you going to utilize all that talent, all those facilities to give rise to education of scientists and engineers? Well, one way he suggested in this publication was to create federal universities at national laboratories and give them the right to issue academic degrees, popular with nearby universities because they were in between UT and Oak Ridge. Joint institutes with neighboring universities, so the students would get their degrees from the university, but do their research at the national laboratory with the Oak Ridge researchers being faculty at the university to guide the students. Well, that was an idea way ahead of its time, and wasn't until we invented the Bredesen Center in 2010 that that idea in that exact form came into existence. The 1960s were a time of change in the country. The Vietnam War led to real budget problems for the federal government. Rachel Carson published The Silent Spring in '62, which really started, and some people say, the environmental movement. There were the assassinations of presidents and important people that affected a lot. The impact on Oak Ridge was extreme in the '60s. Y-12 had to find a new mission because enriching uranium was not its chief mission anymore, but they found that their precision engineering could lead them into serving the military for helping to make weapons. Oak Ridge became a more balanced laboratory as reactor programs declined. UT in the '60s was led by Andy Holt. The student population more than doubled, the campus more than doubled. An ecology program was started. AEC gave 2,000 acres of land to UT for the Arboretum. And very important for the partnership was what Alvin Nielsen led. That is a grant from the Ford Foundation to bring Oak Ridgers onto the UT faculty in a part-time role. Well, that was important. That has blossomed. But that was the first example of of Oak Ridge researchers playing an official role on the UT faculty. Also in the '60s and '67, the UT Oak Ridge School of Biomedical Science was created. This was in a way the forerunner of the Bredesen Center, but more extreme, and it was fully located at Oak Ridge. This was located in the biology division at Y-12. Building 9207. Students lived in Oak Ridge. They took their courses from faculty who were actually members of the biology division, did their research in the biology division. This was funded by NIH for many years. It was a UT degree, part of the UT graduate school, but it was fully contained in Oak Ridge. Franklin Hamilton was one of the first Black faculty hired. Picture of him is there in order to be part of this biomedical school and also take the lead on outreach to HBCUs for this program. This continued until about '92 when the NIH grant ended and UT did not want to foot that bill anymore. And but besides, biology departments on campus viewed this school in Oak Ridge as a competitor. And so it died in the early '90s. Ecology became important in the '60s. Stanley Auerbach was hired in the 50s at Oak Ridge National Lab to apply systems theory to ecology. And so that prospered at Oak Ridge in the 60s. In 67, he was in a meeting with Vice Chancellor Walter Herndon and a UT faculty member, James Tanner, to ask how could we start an ecology program at UT? Well, deans were opposed to a new school or college. Department heads were opposed to a new department. So a compromise was a program, an ecology program that started in 69 and ran well for 20 years before it was incorporated into the Department of Ecology and Evolutionary Biology. And it worked well. There were a lot of faculty from different departments were involved in this. Also 35 adjunct faculty from Oak Ridge. And this put UT on the ecology map in graduate education and research. Very important. So in the 60s, I acknowledged Alvin Nielsen, especially for his contributions to the partnership. In the 70s, reactor programs continued to go downhill at Oak Ridge, and the winds of change were coming in the country. So Alvin Weinberg formed two new research divisions, the Energy Division and the Environmental Science Division. He asked Sam Bell to run the Energy Division. Sam had gotten his engineering degree at UT in 1940, worked running reactor programs at Oak Ridge for decades, and then he started the Energy Division and retired soon thereafter to help his son, Sandy, start Ruby Tuesdays. His son was an undergraduate at UT, and they started Ruby Tuesdays, which became a chain across the country. So Sam Bell had a big role, UT graduate, undergraduate in the 70s. In the 80s, a lot changed in the 80s. Lamar Alexander came on the scene. He was governor for 8 years, first of 5 consecutive governors to invest resources in this partnership. He was, in the 80s, we had a change of contractor. Union Carbide decided they would leave town as the manager of the 3 facilities. And we, UT, considered bidding on that contract at that time. Lamar became president in '88 and helped organize or visited President Bush to UT. We thought about that. I was on the committee to think about that in '82. Should UT compete for the management role in Oak Ridge? And we talked to a dozen companies in the fall of '82 because we knew we needed a partner. We could not do that alone. Finally, in January of '83, Department of Energy announced that they would keep the contracts together, K25, Y12, Oak Ridge National Lab, Paducah, another enrichment facility. And that's when we, UT, dropped out because we did not want to be involved at that time in managing a weapons lab. In addition, we weren't ready. UT wasn't mature enough, not ready to compete for that management role. But we need another 15 years before we would be ready. But still, the Science Alliance was born. Paul Hiray was the first director. I was the second director. That was a good time. Jack Reese, the chancellor, Herman Postma, the lab director, were good friends and colleagues. So we started the Science Alliance, started hiring faculty jointly, distinguished scientists, built the first joint institute at Oak Ridge. I'm the guy on the left with red hair and a mustache. And so the partnership was really building quickly. And then Lamar had President Bush come to campus in February of 1990. That was a big deal. As director of the Science Alliance, I had 20 minutes sitting there next to the president, explaining the Science Alliance, explaining his partnership to him. There was Governor McWhirter, President Alexander, deans, distinguished scientists, chancellors were present. There was Chancellor John Quinn. It was a big day for me, that's for sure, and for the university. So Lamar had a profound effect on the partnership, for sure. In the 90s, Bob Honey took the lead on organizing the National Transportation Research Center, which opened in 2000. Land given by the Knox County off of Hardin Valley Road to provide a research facility for transportation programs at the laboratory and the university. So that was a big step in the partnership. Then the rumors came in '98. Rumors that Alex Zucker brought the rumors to Homer Fisher and to me that DOE would again compete the contract to manage Oak Ridge National Lab. By this time, the three contracts had been separated, and we knew we could compete for just the contract to manage Oak Ridge National Lab. So President Joe Johnson, a wonderful guy, started the task force chaired by Homer and me. We interviewed 15 partners in the fall of '98. Finally, just after Thanksgiving in '98, Bill Media from Battelle came to town. We all met in Joe's office and made UT Battelle. Homer Fisher on the right and Bill Media on the left then took the lead in trying to win the contract. By the way, UT beat Florida State in January of '99 to our first national championship in the modern era. That was a good omen. We signed up core universities to be part of our UT Battelle team. Vanderbilt declined to be a core university because they were teaming with Lockheed Martin, who were bidding to continue their Oak Ridge National Lab Management contract. February 19th, I learned that I would need to go on leave and be the deputy director at the lab if UT Battelle won. That was a big surprise for me, a big change in direction. And we got a letter in July from Governor Sundquist and the two speakers committing $12 million of state construction funds for new joint institutes should UT Battelle win. We did win. In October, we heard that we had won the contract to manage the laboratory to start in April 2000. And that's just remarkable when you think about it, because 60 years before, UT had no PhD programs. So the university had come a long way. So Homer Fisher, I give a lot of credit to for the advances in the 90s. UT Battelle started April 1st of 2000. We had to get the spallation neutron source built on budget on time. That was important, got that done. There was a renovation of the campus. This was a parking lot for 60 years outside of a fenced off national laboratory. Well, we got rid of the parking lot, moved the fence out by 5 miles and built a new campus, which has had a tremendous impact on the laboratory. UT became Oak Ridge National Lab became a supercomputing lab led by Thomas Zachariah. They got Department of Energy money to build a 1 petaflop supercomputer. Thomas also took the lead on a UT proposal to the National Science Foundation. We won that, and in 2008, UT got a 1 petaflop supercomputer. They sat side by side at this new facility we built in Oak Ridge, which had sufficient cooling, sufficient power to run 2 or 3 supercomputers. And so UT got on the supercomputing map at that time too. By the way, this also was a time of troubles with presidents at UT. Wade Gilley became president of the university just as we were making our proposal for UT Battelle. But then that all came apart a year later in May of 2001. I went to the Board of Governors. This meeting of the Board of Governors proposed that we add Vanderbilt as a core university. I thought I had all the core universities in UT behind this. Well, Wade Gilley went bananas and spent what seemed like an eternity berating me in the process. I was pretty upset. The motion failed, but then 2 days later, my good friend David Keim published the first of a series of stories about the affair between Pamela Reed and Wade Gilley that resulted in Wade Gilley resigning already in June as UT president. So, and that was followed by John Shoemaker being hired in 2002, and he lasted only a year and a half as he was fired or left before being fired because of financial questions. He couldn't keep separate his personal finances and the university finances. Eli Fly was interim, and then John Peterson was hired. He had a more successful tenure, but even he resigned before his 5 years were up. So we had a time of turmoil in the 2000s, 3 failed or partially failed presidencies. Luckily, Loren Crabtree was here. Loren was the chancellor through much of that period, and he kept the ship afloat. He really helped this partnership prosper in spite of the turmoil at the top. In contrast, there was consistent and seamless transition in leadership at Oak Ridge National Lab. Bill Media went back to Patel, succeeded by Jeff Wadsworth, who then was succeeded by Tom Mason. A very seamless transition of leadership without losing a step at ORNL in the 2000s. And in 2000, Governor Phil Bredesen was governor. He was another governor that funded new programs at UT. He funded governor's chairs with new money, a biofuels initiative, and he gave money to start interdisciplinary center and a joint PhD in energy science. So Bill Media is an important person in the decade of the 2000s. So with Governor Bredesen's input, we started a center that we now call the Bredesen Center. We started, and I was the leader of this, we started a joint PhD between UT and ORNL in energy science and engineering in 2010. And a few years later, we started a second one in data science. The first one was funded by $6 million from the state when Bredesen was governor. The second was funded by $6 million from the state when Bill Haslam was governor. So once again, it's the investment in this partnership by 5 consecutive Tennessee governors. Very extraordinary. And of course, Jimmy Cheek. Jimmy Cheek was chancellor throughout this period. He was really a great supporter of the Bredesen Center, of the partnership, in addition to leading a sensational building campaign on campus. At this time, additive manufacturing took off. Suresh Babu was one of the governor's chairs hired to be a UT leader in the manufacturing demonstration facility, which opened in 2012 behind the National Transportation Research Center. Supercomputing continued to fly big time. And a new element 117, was discovered in part by input from Oak Ridge, UT Vanderbilt, and it's called Tennessine, after the state. So Phil Bredesen was a leader that I wish to acknowledge in the 2010s. What's the future? Well, we've learned a lot from the 80 years of this partnership. That's why we're writing a book, to lay this out, how this has worked so well. The university and the federal facilities in Oak Ridge have prospered through this partnership. And as far as the future, there's the Oak Ridge Institute. It was started this year. And this is the new sign of the intimate partnership. Department of Energy has funded $20 million to support the Oak Ridge Institute. It'll be based at UT, but the purpose is to expand interdisciplinary research and education, graduate education between UT and Oak Ridge National Laboratory. And so I'm happy that this has happened. This is the last chapter of our book, talking about the future, and Oak Ridge Institute is a real part of that future. And people too. I've retired, Wayne Davis is retired, Jim Roberto is retired, but here's a new set of leaders, the president and Randy Boyd and Stacy Patterson, the vice president for research, and a new chancellor and vice chancellor for research, Thomas Zachariah and Michelle Buchanan, the director and deputy director at the laboratory. Suresh Babu succeeded me as director of the Bredesen Center. So that's a real sign of success, I feel, of this partnership. Not only have programs developed and been maintained, but new leaders, very strong leaders, have been brought in to continue the evolution of this partnership. So it's a great story, and I hope you've all enjoyed listening to this and thinking about this, and I'd be glad to take questions.